John chapter 11 and Proverbs chapter 2. Aren't you just loving the Gospel of John, this great study we're in? Today in John chapter 11, we come back to Mary and Martha and Lazarus. And it's important that the Bible hits these three people from multiple angles. You know, in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42, we have the classic story where Martha was so busy that she got overwrought and she got angry. And Jesus, tell my sister to help me. And Jesus told Martha, Martha, you fret too much. You're worried about many things, but Mary has chosen the one thing. So if you remember that, I want you to remember that background as I read John chapter 11, verse 1. Now, a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany. Now watch these next four words. The village of Mary. Now we know from Luke that Martha was the oldest because it's called the home of Martha. So Martha probably owned the home. And Lazarus, being the male, would have been the one most honored and maybe the one that the property would actually be in the name of. So Mary, being the younger sister and female, would be the least known or the least honored. And yet the town was called the town of Mary, the village of Mary. In fact, it goes on and says he was from Bethany, the village of Mary, and her sister Martha. Then it goes verse 2. This Mary, really punches it there, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. And so what I wrote down here in my Bible is, it's not the busy doer who is remembered, but the tender, kind person. You look back 10, 20 years in your life, 30, 40 years, you don't remember the busy people. You don't remember the people, but the people who were kind, the people who looked at you and said, I just love you and you're so wonderful and I'm so proud of you. And for me, being someone who can have Martha tendencies, whenever I've been sharp is when I've been overly busy. And so I want to be a Mary, and that's why I've learned that the older I get, to not do too much, but to always stay centered, have time with the Lord, and to learn to say that N-O word so that my margins are restful, that I'm kind first, productive second. So Mary was the one who was remembered and the one who they sort of thought the whole town, this is Mary's village, this is Bethany. Now let's go over to Proverbs chapter 2. And Proverbs chapter 2 is one of my favorite contrasts in the whole book of Proverbs, especially if you compare verse 10 to verse 14 and have a phrase, if you ever want to jot this down. The phrase is, attitudes produce appetites. I want to say that again. Attitudes produce appetites. Now, why is that so important? Because the world says what I feel is what I am. The world says I have no control over my appetites. The world says I have no control over my emotions. But the Bible says, no. The Bible says your attitudes decide your appetites. So in Proverbs chapter 10, it talks about the person who has a right attitude. And it says wisdom, Proverbs chapter 2, verse 10, it says, for wisdom will enter your heart and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. So when you have an attitude, I want wisdom, it says that wisdom is, your appetite comes, ooh, I want to learn more, I want to understand more, I want the heart of God. But then you go over to verse 14, it talks about the opposite, those who delight in doing wrong and rejoice in the perverseness of evil. So it's such a refreshing thing to me that I can sit there and say, Lord, if I choose the right attitude, that's the front of my train. The caboose of my train will be my appetites. And eventually, as long as I keep choosing to seek Christ, my appetites will be eventually that I hunger and thirst for your righteousness. And that's who you are today. Today, you have chosen to set your attitude towards Christ, and he's going to cause your heart to hunger, and your appetites are going to be for the things of God, and God is so proud of you. God bless you. Have an awesome day today.